Hey. So welcome back to the VET S.O.S, which is presenting Operation Startup. Remember, don't drown in SEAL transition. Grab the VET S.O.S lifeline. Operation Startup is proud to be affiliated with the Neil Haley Show and sponsored by Spirit Point Solution. Spirit Point Solution is our one-stop shop for leading edge products, services, and training from multiple vendors. That's from your AI training to corporate gifts and so much more in between. They have everything you need to help your organization thrive in a modern economy. So check out all the valuable offers at spiritpointonline.com. I'll say it again, spiritpointonline.com. And remember, please use our code VET S.O.S on anything you purchase there. That will help us continue our mission of improving the lives of those who have served. On today's show, we have Miss Tina Erwin. She is passionate about being a ghost helper, teaching the living to help the dead. She wants to empower us all to help all ghosts. This is a compassion we will want for ourselves by using the crossing over prayer on ghosthelpers.com. And the crossing over prayer book, when a psychic only connects to a dead person, the ghost does not receive the critical assistance they desperately need. Tina studied metaphysics all her life, gaining insight into the mystical world of magic and spirituality. The author of 8 books on metaphysics, her writings comes from an intense desire to know and understand the hard science behind the world of action and reaction, combined with a sincere desire to share this understanding with other knowledge seekers. Her lifelong studies into the deeper meaning of events and actions were further enhanced by the experiences of a dynamic 20-year career in the Navy, working for the submarine force, retired at the commander level. How you doing today, Miss Tina?
I am doing great, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure having you here. So let's go ahead and hop right into the interview. So we're going to go back down memory lane when you first were getting out and decided to retire. Kind of walk us through the 3 biggest lessons you learned in that transition from what we call military life to what we call civilian life, and then how those lessons shape who you are today.
I think that's a really powerful question. Sometimes in your life, you reach a moment when you know that it's over, that the karma of what you've been doing is done. And I realized this. I screened for Major Command, and I was very honored because they offered me all major commands that were available to women at the commander level in the world. There were 14 positions, and I got my pick of all of them. And and I was stunned and honored, and I turned it down, and the detailer was not happy with me.
Mm,
She said, "But this is an honor," and I said, "It is, except that, I'm gonna pass that honor to someone else. I achieved that. I'm good to go. It's time for me to leave."
mm,
And sometimes the karma of a situation, whether it's a relationship or a job, is over, and it's like you can feel the door closing, and it's time to do something else. At that point in time, I had started a computer company, Women's Advantage Software, which would help you run your house. But this is 1992. I needed a million touch screen, but that hadn't
mm.
exactly been invented yet. So I was probably about 7 years ahead of the power curve. So I was using a Macintosh, and it needed constant updates. We went from 28 shades of gray to, thankfully, full color, and managing all those upgrades was very, very difficult. And I realized eventually that this wasn't going to work. I closed my company. Took me 7 years to pay off my investors, but I paid them off because there's a lot of karma attached with paying off debt. And then
Mhm.
I didn't have a clue what to do. And I kept casting about, and I realized that a lifelong interest in metaphysics and a somewhat private psychic ability, which I didn't really do much with, just began to explode, and that really was my next path. So that's where that came from. And I also watched a lot of my officers and senior enlisted crew members, because I had 150 men work for me at the point when I was retiring. And they're in theme and variation, they were all facing that, and I watched the iterations that they went through, and that feeling of loss of identity. No one stands up when you walk in the room, and you don't wear a scrambled egg hat anymore, and there's no parking place for you. You go back to being a you go to being a different person, because when you joined the Navy, you weren't at that level. Now you've
Mhm.
achieved that, and you feel like you start at ground zero, but you don't. You take with it the knowledge of how to manage people, what an organization look like that's well run, and what it looks like when leadership is terrible. You take the knowledge of confidence in yourself and a belief in yourself that can transcend the difficult aspects of moving from a military career to a civilian career,
Mhm.
and how you have to learn to see yourself differently. Those were some of the huge takeaways.
Got you. Got you. So now take me back. I mean, you were selected for command. I mean, you could have easily been CO. I mean, and going on up flag level, but you decided to retire, to move to pivot and retire at that time. And it was a great honor at that point in time. But now let's really talk about what were you going through or what's going on at your life at the time you decided, you know, to build your own thing as an entrepreneur? Because I'm sure you could have easily gotten a consulting job. You could have easily gotten a government contracting or GS, high level GS job, taking that safe route. But you decided not to take that safe route. You went and decided to become an entrepreneur. What was going on in your life and what was the mindset like to make you make that decision?
I get bored really easily, and the job I had gone from being the assistant chief of staff for force physical security, anti-terrorism, and law enforcement for Commander Submarine Force, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, to
Hmm.
the executive officer for submarine training facility. And I was bored out of my mind. So I started a computer company because I was bored.
Oh,
And
wow.
startups are a blast. The designing the software, beta testing the software. And I'm super organized. So I was able to do my day job really quickly. And I had a fantastic crew. Love my crew. But I mean, this was not all an encompassing job like the previous one had been. Wasn't flying all over the world,
Hmm.
doing crazy things in the middle of the night with Navy SEALs. So that those days are over. And I needed to decide, how long am I going to do this? I'm married, I have two children, and there comes a point when it's like, you got to do something different now. This isn't who you are anymore. You'll always be Commander US Navy, but you're going to be retired. It's time to get ready to go. And something has to end before something new can begin. And after I retired, and I had this computer company and I closed it. I applied to the largest communication company, that because we'd bought secure voice radios from them. I can't think of their name right now, but I bought $1 million worth of secure voice radios because the submarine force didn't have secure voice radios when they were moving nuclear weapons. And I created the algorithm, which is still in use today, that enables you to move nuclear weapons on submarines, um, encrypted with an encrypted algorithm. And so I got an interview and I was about to sign the contract. Everything had been negotiated. And um, I went to sign the contract and I walked in. They said, "We changed our mind." And I said, "What do you mean you changed your mind?" And they said,
Mm.
"I don't understand it either, but we were told that we're not hiring you right now." I mean, it was a six-figure salary. And
Hmm.
I walked out in shock. And then, because I've been studying metaphysics since I was 8 years old, and I had to step back and go, "Okay, this had to have happened for a reason."
Hmm.
And Motorola, I purchased $1 million worth of Motorola radios, and I knew how everything worked, so I was a great candidate for them. They were so impressed with my resume, and all of a sudden that door closed. And when you are faced with, "This is what I think I'm going to be doing. I've got this computer company. When John Scully was president of Apple Computer and it wasn't Steve Jobs, Apple Computer was not an honest company. Maybe they're still not, I don't know, but when they were I was working with them, it was horrible.
Mhm.
So I had to close my company. And then I
Mm.
tried to work for Motorola and that door closed. So now I've had 2 doors close. And that forced me to step back and go, "All right, you know how to play politics. You know how to get stuff done." I mean, Lord knows when you're in the Navy or any military branch, you know how to get stuff done. You know how to
Yep.
work with people and appreciate them. So the message, and I got very still and I said, "Well, what am I missing here?" Because you can either pound your head against the wall or you can say, if these 2 really amazing doors were closed, because we were gonna put one of Apple computers and my software in every new home in America like they were putting them in schools. I would have been a multimillionaire overnight,
Mhm.
but that door was closed. And I had to ask myself, "Okay, you've had 2 doors closed now. What are you really supposed to do?" And it took me, I would say, another 18 months. I'm not gonna say it was easy to figure it out. And what I discovered was that I am not supposed to go into corporate America. I'm not supposed to be an entrepreneur. I am supposed to help individuals with very unusual spiritual problems. Because what's the Navy anyway if it's not people? And what
Yes.
happens is, it's starting at 6:30 in the morning. I'd have a line out my door as the XO
Yeah.
managing all of the problems from submarines on the waterfront to what was going on with the latest, dive trainer or firefighting equipment. So I thought, okay, what are you supposed to do? And when you're listening to perhaps the only word I can use is a higher power, and you step back and you realize it's not that you failed at those 2 tries, it's that you don't need that. You already have that experience. A new door is going to open and you have to be ready and you have to be patient and listen. So I did. And I people started to call me. I wasn't advertising. People had no idea. But out of the clear blue sky, someone would say, I remember you. Could you please help me with this? And I had a 3-hour client this morning. So I mean, I retired in 92 and I'm still seeing clients and still writing books and still doing podcasts. And
Mhm.
what I've discovered is I love what I do. It makes me extremely happy, and it worked out really well. So, just because those 2 doors closed, it only meant that something wonderful was waiting for me.
Gotcha. Now, getting up being an entrepreneur, like you said, it's not an easy task. What I wanna know from you is, what's the one thing for you in your business that keeps you going and kinda like keeps you, that spark that keeps you going every day that you wake up?
I have a spiritual mission,
Mm.
and that mission is to change the way people see someone with psychic ability. I mean, frankly, most military people have a really heavy duty sixth sense, especially if you are deliberately submerging your ship. You have to
Mhm.
feel the boat. You have to feel your crew. You can sense when something's wrong. And I remembered all these conversations I had with captains of submarines and crew members who would take me aside and tell me something. And I realized that there was this incredible level of psychic ability among men was never talked about. And I love what I do. And I used all the experiences of the Navy, the experiences of the men I worked with and who worked for me, and the men I worked for to look at
Mhm.
all those personalities and the problems that the Navy is a microcosm of the macrocosm that's the world. And if you're helping a crew member with unusual problems, I mean, if somebody walked in and I met every crew member, shook their hand, sat down and talked to them, went through their medical record, and I knew exactly what I could expect from that crew member. I could just by shaking his hand, I could tell you more about the individual than you'd ever wanna know. Part of that is psychic ability, which is higher than most people, but the other part is I cared about the person in front of me. I wanted him, because mostly they were men, to do a really
Mhm.
good job. But you have situations where somebody comes to you and their child is dying, or they're limited duty and they're undergoing something horrible. Well, you have a whole different relationship with them. Well, now I deal with people who have horrible situations, including I have clients who were human trafficked and escaped human trafficking. So to work with a client where you can help them go along and begin to heal themselves is probably the most rewarding thing in the world, because after the horrors that have happened to you, how do you get up in the morning?
Yeah.
And if I get to help that person, that means that I'm still doing the mission, which is service to others. And that's what all military people do, service to others. I just get to do it really on a focused level.
Gotcha. And so now we understand that, when you're starting a business and getting your footing, we know it's not the best of situations sometimes. It's kind of some hard times and some frustrating parts of the journey. So how did you deal with those um how did you deal with those frustrating parts of the journey, and also, what made you keep going?
When I had to close my company, I loved my computer company, my software company. I loved
Mhm.
designing software. Oh my gosh, that was fun. The beta testing, the figuring it out, intellectually, it was like dessert. And when it closed, I grieved it. And you're correct. It was really, really hard. I mean, we had a lazy Susan that sat on your kitchen counter. We had a little tiny Mac Classic, and I had contracts with Apple Computer and Hewlett Packard and Kodak and all kinds of companies to do this job. I was the first woman to do this on a lot of levels. This is
Mm,
super cool, but it wasn't ever really going to work because I didn't have unlimited funds to keep changing the operating system of a Macintosh computer as it aligned with my software. I just couldn't keep it up forever. That
gotcha.
was a reality check. I had to face facts. Close your company, pay off your investment, do something different. Go ahead and grieve it. If you can grieve it, then you can understand things that other people are going through. When you have a divorce, you're grieving it. When something in your life ends, you have to go through the grieving process. Take all the lessons you can learn from it and then dust yourself off and do something new.
Got you. Got you. So now, I don't know if there was any programs at the time back in 1992 when you did get out, but and you can correct me if I'm wrong, did you tap into any programs or transitioning programs or any type of mentorships? I mean, maybe not once you got out, once you were transitioning out, but once you got out, are you part of any communities that you could recommend to the audience?
Before I got out, there were transition programs in the early 90s because the statistics they had were, and they didn't have them on women. They only had them on men because they didn't have enough women who had reached a senior enough level, whether it was officer or enlisted, to be able to have statistics. But most men didn't live 5 years after they retired. They were dead in 5 years. And the
Mhm.
Navy thought that was a horrible statistic, so they wanted to fix it. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s. So there were all kinds of transition programs and lectures, and then after I retired and started my company, I became one of the speakers for those groups. I volunteered my time and talked to other um, individuals about to retire to help them understand that there's a life after the Navy, and all of the great habits that you created and you embraced when you were in the military are transferable. But
Mhm.
the work ethic is not always the same. And one of my lieutenants actually was a commander who worked for me. he went to a nuclear reactor facility in Illinois, as a like a reactor plant manager, and
Mhm.
they got upset with him because he arrived at work at 7:30 expecting to go to work, and they said, "We don't show up till 9. You know, you need to tone down your work ethic." It was a real wake-up call about certain things. So, I helped as many people as I could, including one of the captains I worked with. He couldn't even say the word retire. He'd start to stutter and have an anxiety attack.
Wow.
But he went on to work at the Hannaford plant in, I think that's in Utah? Not anyway, I don't remember where it is, and could be Utah.
Mhm.
Anyway, and he's doing a really great job there, but the concept of retiring was so alien for him because, you know, he was a submariner. That's all he could think of. My husband had a hard time with it. I mean, we've been married 53 years, and he spent 42 years of this marriage at sea.
Mm.
This man loves to go to sea. So, you have to decide who you are and what your biggest talent is. My husband's a mariner. He retired and eventually he went back into the merchant marine, and then he eventually retired when he finally no longer went to sea. He retired after being a captain of an oil rig in Brazil.
Wow.
He's really good at, being a mariner, so he
Yeah.
continued to do what he was really good at.
Gotcha. So now, Tina, tell us about your business, what exactly it is you do, who do you serve, and what makes you a little bit different than other companies that are out there?
What I do is I I'm the author of 9 books. My last book was, Psychic Children, Psychic People. It's a significant work. I write my own books. I do my own self-publishing. I do all of my own audiobooks, so I had to teach myself how to do all the technology required for that. I do podcasts all over the world. I have clients all over the world. And what I do is help people with unusual spiritual problems. They think they're haunted. They think there's like a curse or some dark cloud over them. Sometimes it's a really easy fix. Sometimes it takes longer. And I uh, offer the books on Amazon so that anyone can get them. And I also have one of my best sellers, ironically, is the Crossing Over Prayer book.
Hmm.
And that enables anyone to cross over a ghost without the use of a medium. So I'm
Mm.
offering an independence and an empowerment to others instead of paying for someone who's going to string you along for years. Oh, I'm getting this message from your dead husband. No, 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 no. Cross that person over and talk to your husband in your prayers, but you don't need to be having a medium string you along for years and years. So if
Wow.
you can still perform service, that's really what my business is, helping others.
Gotcha. So for anyone that wants to learn more and tap into your business and get connected with you, where should they go?
Ghosthelpers.com. I've got a lot of
Ghost.
my videos, my books are listed there and with a direct link to Amazon, and it explains what I do. The Crossing Over Prayer is on that website and it's absolutely free. The Compassion Prayer for Suicide is also on that. And it helps people to have a spiritual moment in the privacy of their own home. And it helps people understand that prayer doesn't live in a church or a building of wood and stone. Prayer lives inside of you. So that would be probably one of the best descriptions of what I do.
Gotcha. Well, as you heard us say, ghosthelpers.com. Check her out, get connected to Miss Tina, and she'll be able to help you out. So we want to thank Miss Tina today for joining us on the VET S.O.S podcast. On behalf of the VET S.O.S family, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. You can find VET S.O.S podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, YouTubes, and all social media platforms. And make sure you subscribe and follow VET S.O.S so you don't miss anything like this a great interview we did today. And remember, our motto here is don't drown in the sea of transition, grab the VET S.O.S lifeline.